Hey guys, so I got a pretty fun tutorial that I want to code along with you guys today. It'll be a video tutorial, and what we are using today is React and TypeScript. So let me show you guys the game real quick. So it's Minesweeper, and if you guys had a Windows PC like in the 90s or in the early 2000s, you guys are pretty familiar with this game. So that was my inspiration for this, and it plays pretty much exactly like what you would expect it to. So to begin the game, you click on any of the cells, and right now we're playing on the easy difficulty, and notice how his face is very expressive. If we are holding down on one of the buttons, his face changes. We could right click to put a flag, and notice the flag counter went down. I could right click again to get rid of that, and if I could keep on playing like this, the numbers correspond to how many bombs are adjacent to it. And if I mess up, like for example, clicking here, I know there's a bomb here, then he dies. And there's also a timer. The timer stops once you die or you win. And to restart the game, just click on his face again. All right, so this is the game. If you don't have a Windows PC like me, then I don't have access to this game. However, we could go to minesweeperonline.com and pretty much have the same game. I'm using a custom difficulty here. Let me go back to a beginner. And we pretty much have the same thing here. So this is what we're going to be making today. All right, so in my video tutorials, I try to be as descriptive as possible to explain you guys why I write the code that I do. But there will be some requirements for this tutorial. For example, I highly recommend that you guys have experience using Reacts and possibly even React hooks before you begin this tutorial, because we're going to be using lots of hooks. If you don't, if you have zero experience with React, then I highly suggest you learn React first. But if you know a little bit of React, then I'm pretty sure you could follow along. Another thing that we use in this tutorial is TypeScript. So my initial plan was I initially coded this whole game using just native JavaScript and not TypeScript, but I ran into a couple problems on the way, and I thought this game was a very good use case of why we should use TypeScript. However, I think the TypeScript features that I use is pretty simple, so even if you haven't used TypeScript before, I think it should be fairly simple to follow along with. I have my GitHub repo in the links below. Here is a TypeScript version. You could clone this, do whatever you want with it. And also, I have my original JavaScript code in the links below too. Now, the game plays the same, I think. For the most part, it will play the same, but the code might be a little different, but the basic idea is the same, except everything's written in JavaScript. Another thing that I used in this tutorial was using SASS, SCSS or SASS. So instead of using CSS. And if you've never touched SASS before, don't be afraid, don't be scared. It's pretty much almost identical as SASS, and it's pretty intuitive. So don't be scared if you've never experienced that. I think it'll be this will be another good use case of why we should use SASS over something like CSS. Anyways, if you liked the tutorial, click like and subscribe below. I'll be releasing fun projects like this on every weekends, and I release JavaScript algorithm tutorials on the weekdays. I've gone ahead and installed Create React app with TypeScript. What you have to type down, I will write down below. So you could just copy that and paste it to start up your project, your Create React app project. So assuming that it has finished loading for you guys should see a folder structure something like this. And before we continue, I just want us to begin by installing all the dependencies that we need for this. So the first thing I like doing always is installing Prettier and making it work well with the ESLint. So I'm just gonna Google right now, ESLint Prettier. And the one I'm looking for that I use is this one, How to Make Prettier Work with ESLint by Ark Wierek, however you may say that. So pretty much what I do is open up your terminal. Ooh, that's too big. All right, there we go. Let's first install Prettier by doing npm I Prettier, and let's just install these guys too. ESLint config Prettier, and ESLint plugin prettier. And while that is loading on your main directory folder, we're gonna create a file called .eslintrc.json. So .eslintrc.json, and we're gonna copy this part and paste it over here. Again, link to this website will be in the description below. And by the way, this is completely optional. You don't need to install Prettier if you don't want to. You're gonna see my code jump around time to time. I have a habit of doing that. I just like using Prettier to format my code. So if you see that, don't be alarmed, please. And it is just my Prettier working. All right, so that is that. Not sure why we have an error message here. I'm just gonna ignore it for now. Okay, so now something else that we need is Node.sass. So we're gonna be using SASS for this project along with TypeScript. Initially, I did this project without using TypeScript and without using SASS, but I think this is a very good example of why those may come in handy on a real project. So just take my word for it and let's install SASS for now. If you have never used SASS before, don't be scared. It's pretty similar and it's pretty intuitive in my opinion as to how to use it. It's very similar to CSS, so don't be scared. We'll do npm I, we should save these to dev, but whatever. npm I node.sass. Let's let that save, install real quick. All right, so for me, the Node.sass has finished installing, and I'm on my GitHub website here, and I'm gonna make a new repo. So I'm gonna be committing every once in a while, all the changes I made. So later, if you're following me and you get stuck somewhere, you could check my repository and check the commit history to see my code. So this may help you guys. So, and if you guys want, you can create your own repo too on this. And by the way, the code that I will make today, that we will be making today, is all, I don't have any copyright on it. You guys could use it. You guys could put it on your projects, make it better. I highly recommend you guys make it better and show me. I'll be very interested in what you guys may make. So feel free to use my code. I'm gonna name my repo name React Minesweeper /TypeScript. I'm putting a TS flag here because I also initially did one in JavaScript. Don't need a description. I'm gonna create this repo. I'm gonna link up my project with my repo. Git remote add origin git at github.com angle 943 React Minesweeper TS git. That should have worked. Now git push -u origin master. And as a matter of fact, I didn't commit yet, so I'm just gonna commit right now. Git add all, git commit. My message is gonna be initial commit and git push. If I refresh the page here, I should see my files. There we go. All right, so let's begin coding. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean up my file. So create React that comes with all of these files, most of which we don't need. So I'm gonna get rid of. The only ones I'm gonna keep is index.txx, index.css, app. I will get rid of apps too. Yeah, so the only ones we're gonna keep is index.css and index.typescript file. Let's delete everything else. And let's get rid of all of our unnecessary dependencies. Imports like those. Don't have an app anymore, but I'm just gonna keep this because I'm gonna make my own app. Erase the service worker. And within our source directory, let's make a folder. We will call these lowercase components folder. These will house all of our components, and the folder, every component, we're gonna have a folder. They're gonna be contained within a folder. I'm gonna call this folder capital app, And within each folders of the components, we will have an index.txx and also the name of the component capitalized and then a SASS file, SCSS file. And I'm just going to initialize a SASS file, SCSS file as capital F. This will be the main shell. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Go back to my app at index file and let's put the boilerplate here. Import React. That's it from React. And what else do I need? Let's import our SASS file. There we go. Const app. This will not have any props. And let's just return with the div with the class name app. That's not what I want. Return div class name app hello from app. I just want to make sure that this appears. And by the way, let's start using TypeScript. So this is a functional component. That doesn't work. We're gonna do react.functional component like so. We are typing the component as a functional component and export default app. Now let's bring that guy into our index file. We're in the outer index file. Let's first import the component we just made. Import app from dot components. We go to the components folder and then we go to the app. Because it was an index file, we don't need to write this. It will just assume that we're getting the index. And let's see if that works. So let me just do npm start to run our server. Let's see if we see hello app. There it is. And now, because we're using SASS, let's change our index CSS to a SASS file. So I'm going to rename this as index.scss. And on my web storm, I've automatically changed that file to, it changed the import here automatically. If you're sitting, make sure you change this to the import.scss on your index.tsx. And I am getting an error. Not anymore. That's good. So this is my new index.scss file. And I'm going to do a couple things here. So first things first, what I like using is grab all of our elements with a star symbol and set the box sizing to border box. And also, when we build our Minesweeper game, I want that to be in the center here. So the way that I'm going to do that is on my body, I'm going to put display flex. Yes. Justify content center, line items center. So notice now it's here, it's in the middle, but it's not down here, in the middle here. That's where we want it. So to do that, we just gotta set the height of this to 100%. That didn't work because I actually want 100 VH. There we go. So now that that's in the middle, let's start building our app component. So our app component, the one that says hello from app right now, this will be the container of our Minesweeper game. And this is where most of our logic is going to take place. So I have a diagram here that I made. And this is like my cheat sheet. Gives me all the CSS files. It's terrible Photoshop work on my end, but I haven't learned Photoshop yet. That's still in my to-do list. So for now, this is what we have. Let me just go over this with you guys real quick. So app component is just this whole component here. Notice it's centered. Our body, which one? Oh, our header. Let me do header first. So our header component, is gonna house this part right here. And within this, there are two components. One is called the face component, and this number and that number are called the number display components. And then this component in the middle, the main thing of the game, is called the capital B with body. And each of these buttons, I'm calling button. So this is how our app is going to be structured. And these are just CSS things that I just cannot memorize. I wrote it here. So let's start building this. Let me have this here. And within our app, we are going to have a header first. Yeah, we'll just use div for now. I may make this into a separate component, or I may just have the logic in my app, depending on how I feel. So we'll see. We'll just keep it in our app component for now. But I'm going to give it a class name of capital H header. And let's just put header here. And what do I want to do? Below that, we want to have a div class name of body. And body here. Let's see what we have. All right, so that's what we have right here. And then let's put some styling to it. So I'm in my app SASS file. So I'm just going to follow this. Our background color, this part right here, is going to be C2, a grayish color. And then padding, notice we got some padding here. That's all 16 pixels. Left, top, top, right, bottom, left, all of them. So 16 pixels. And then the border, notice we have a border here. By the way, I forgot to write it here, but the border width of everywhere, including our outer container and our buttons, is all going to be 4 pixels. So let's do this. Border width is going to be 4 pixels. Border style is going to be solid. And then notice my right and bottom is a darker gray color, and the left and top is it is a white color. So let's do that. Border right color is, if you see here, 999. Border bottom color is also 999. Oops, spelled that wrong. Border left color is white, and border top color is also white. Let's see what we have. All right, so this is what we have. Initially, when I coded this, I put a fixed width and height in my app, like here, width and height. But I changed my mind and I let the children contents, the inside, determine the width and the height that this guy will take. So we're not gonna set width and height to this container. So this is all we're gonna have for now. Now let's stylize our body. I'm gonna leave the body here. And then we're gonna have, not the body, I'm sorry. It's because I'm just reading this top to bottom. Let's do our header first. Our header is gonna have a background of 0000C0. Background. And then padding in top and bottom, that's 10 pixels right here. And left to right, that's 12 pixels. And again, this is white here, this border bottom, border right, and border top, border left is 7B, 7B, 7B. It's slightly different than the color of our outer app. Not sure why. So let's do that. I'm just gonna grab this guy right here because it's very long. Our border width is also gonna be 4 pixels. Border style is gonna be solid, and let's see, 7B, 7B, 7B. Right and bottom is white, and left and top is 7B, 7B, 7B. Let's see what we have. Yeah, so it still doesn't really look like it, but I think with a little bit of imagination, you guys can see that this will start looking more like this. By the way, this is minesweeperonline.com. This is my reference. This is what I'm trying to build right here. What we're trying to build. All right, now let's stylize our body. Border. Not border, our body. Capital B. And let's go back to here and our picture. What is the style of our body? So margin top 16 pixels. So this part from the header to the body, there are 16 pixels. And again, we got a border here for top left, one color, same color as the border of this one. As a matter of fact, same color as our borders of our little buttons here, which you cannot see because everything is clicked in this example. But you will see soon enough. All right, so let's just bring this over. Now, a little bit later, we're gonna refactor this to, because there's a lot of repeated code, but let's not do that right now. Let's just bring that over. Make sure the left and top is the colored one. Yep. And that's it. Let's see what we have. So this is what we have so far. And also, so pretty much what our body component does is it's a container for all of these buttons. Now, if you count, we have 9 rows this way and 9 columns this way and 9 rows. So this is a 9 by 9 grid. So I'm going to use CSS Grid to handle this. So let's make display grid for our body. And let's set our grid template rows and columns. Grid template rows first will be, we are going to repeat 9 times 1 FR. What that means is all the 9 elements that will be contained within, they will all take up the same space. That's what this means. Let's do the same thing for columns. And that shouldn't have changed too much. Yeah. Okay, so that's what we have. And this is giving me unknown CSS properties because I grid template columns. Should have an S. There we go. There we go. All right, so that's looking a little better. Now let's start putting some elements in. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a separate component for this number display. I'm gonna call it number display. There's a separate component for this face. Actually, for the face, I won't make it a separate component for now. I'll just keep it within here. I might make it into a separate component later. We'll see. If my app component gets too cluttered, then I will take it out and put it into a separate component. But for now, let's just leave it in here. But for sure, the number display, because we have 2 different numbers, there's no reason why we should have repeated code right now. So we'll make a separate component for that. So go to your components folder, make a new directory called capital number and capital D display. Again, put an index.txx tsx, and also capital number, capital D display SCSS file. And let's initialize our number display SASS file with the name of the component, like so. That will be our outer class. Go to your number display index, and let's put import React first. And let's import our SASS file. And it's too big for me. All right, there we go. Const. Let's see. Number display. This one will have props. And return div called number display for now. And we'll just write 000 for now. And then export default number display. So right now we're getting an error because we're using TypeScript, so we have to type our props. So let's do that right now actually. React FC and our props. I'm going to make a type here, an interface for our props. I'm going to call this number display props. And as a matter of fact, let's put it to use right now. So one of the props that it will take is the actual number itself, the number that it's going to display. So I'm going to call that value, and that will be a number type. So let's put our type for this functional component as number display props. And we're going to destructure, instead of using props.value everywhere, I'm just going to destructure it from the get-go. From our props, like so. And instead of using our 000, we'll just put value here. And let's put this to use. Go back to our app file and let's put it in here. So we have two number displays. Make sure you import that by putting this WebStorm did it for me automatically, but make sure you guys do so. Write that at the top, and it has a required prop of value, and our value that we're gonna use for now is just 000. It's giving us an error because octoliterals. Oh no. Okay. Let's just use 0. Whoops. All right, there we go. So let's start styling this, and we'll put another one too, as a matter of fact. The timer. I know there's a phase in between, we'll add that later. For our timer, let's put 23. Like so. Let's stylize our header. We don't need this index SASS file for a while, so let's just close that. Go to your app SASS file. Let me make this a little smaller. Let's go to our header. Yes. And so our header component is gonna be a Flexbox. We're gonna just make these flex. And we don't need to set the flex direction because by default it's rows, it goes left to right. And then our justified content, which is how are these elements inside going to be spaced? Is it going to be from flex start, meaning it just goes from left to right? Is it going to be flex end? Does it go start from here and it starts going this way? Is it going to be centered, everything centered? Or in our case, we want space, not around, but between, which is it gives equal amount of space to all the elements inside. They all want to be as far as possible, as much as possible, in equal distance. And also how they're going to be aligned vertically is center, which how we do that is align items center. Let's see what we have here. All right, so notice that they have a bunch of, they don't like being next to each other. It's because we did justify content space between. So they want to be as far away from each other as possible. Now let's start styling our number input. Go to your number display, and do I have any things here? Yes, right here. So our width is going to be 80 pixels. Our height is 48 pixels. And the color of our font is going to be FF0701, which is like a red. And our background is going to be black. Let's see what we have. There we go. All right, so that is not enough for us to have. I think I forgot what the font size of that's supposed to be. But let's just continue going. I want to center my numbers. So the way that we do that is just text align, center. There we go. All right, so I've gone and looked at the font size of this, and it happens to be 40 pixels. Now let's see what we have. All right, so that's looking a little better. Now, I want, if we write 0, I want it to be padded left so that we always have 3 numbers. So it should be 0, 0, 0, and here it should be 0, 2, 3. So the way that I'm going to do that is go to our number display component. Our value, which is a number, we're going to first convert it to a string, like so, and then use this pad start method. We first give a max length, which we are saying is 3, and we're going to fill it. If it doesn't fulfill 3 characters, we're going to fill it with zeros. Let's see if that works. There we go. So that's looking a little better. And let's put our face in the middle. I'm going to do that in our app component. And let's see. Now put in between. So again, I'm not going to make this into a separate component yet, although I will probably do so in the future. Let's call this div class name face, capital face. And for now, I'm just gonna grab a smiley face, show emoji symbols. All right, so the one I decided to use is this one. I could have used a traditional smiley face, but to me, this one's kind of funny to look at, so I like using this one. And let's see what we get. All right, so that's way too small. So I have to set the size of that real quick. Let's see. I used font size 35 pixels. Maybe I have it here. Oh yeah, font size 35 pixels. So let's put the styling to that. Go to your app file. It within header. Should we put it within header? No, I'll just leave it down here. Face is gonna be width 52 pixels, height 52 pixels, and font size 35 pixels. Let's see what we have. So that's looking a little better. We also need what is it? These borders around it. And it's the same border as before. So this is getting very repetitive, but for now, let's just grab that, put it here. Let's see what we have. It's not aligned, so I'm gonna make this a flex box, and to align in the center, display flex, justify content, center, align items, center. Whoops. There we go. Except I think I want it the other way, because that looks like it's pressed right now. Yes, so I want this one for the gray one for the dark gray one for the right and bottom, and white on left and top. Let's see what we get. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. Let me open up my terminal real quick. And here it's giving me a warning. Emoji should be wrapped in span, have row image, and have an accessible description with ARIA label or ARIA label by. So let's just obey what it says. Go back to my app, put a span here around my emoji. And it's saying it wants a row of image and an ARIA label. I'm gonna call it face. All right, now it's no longer complaining to us. And when I hover over it, I want it to be a cursor pointer. So let's go to our app, put cursor pointer. There we go. Obviously I can't click it, but that's fine. So this is looking pretty good so far. I'm just gonna save this to GitHub. So open up my terminal and let's do git add dot to add everything and git commit with the message finished styling the header and then git push. So before we go on, I just want us to look at all these repeated code. We got all this bunch of border left color, border top color, and so on. So I want us to use what's called a SASS Mixins. So let me Google that real quick. And I want us to introduce this to our app to clean up our codes, our CSS, our styling files a little bit more. So I am going to make a new folder for our SASS Mixins. So let's, on our source file, let's make a new directory. And I will call this styles. And in here, I'm going to put an index SCSS. And here I will have all of my mixins defined. So the first mixin I will have is a button mixin. And let me zoom in for you guys real quick. So to define mixins, you need this @ symbol and then a mixin, and then write the name of your mixin. So mixins, how they work is pretty much, let me write it first and then I'll explain later. So let us go to our app. Let's go to our buttons. So we have two types of buttons. Well, we will have two types of buttons. We will have the smiley face button and all the buttons in here. So as a matter of fact, before I do that, I'm gonna define another mixin called mixin borders. And this one will just have the generic border stuff. So what I wanna put here, for every component, for every div or every element here that has a border, they have some properties that they all have. It is the border width and the border style. So I'm going to copy that and put that here. And let's do this. I am going to introduce variables to my mixins. And let's see. I'm going to introduce variables to my mixin that will define the left top color and the bottom right color. So this is what I'm going to do. Using this, I'm going to introduce two variables. So left top, the color of the left top borders, and also the color, these will be hex values of the right bottom borders. And I will, depending on what, so it's kind of like a function, and depending on what values we feed these, I will put the borders. So let's check this out. For our app, we have this one and that one. Let me just grab all of these, copy those, and go back to my mixin, paste these here. And for right and bottom, I will put right bottom. These are variables. So to use variables, we use this $sign. in a SASS file, and right bottom and left top, like so. So let's try using this mixin. So pretty much whenever we use a mixin, we're just like putting all of these properties here into wherever we use the mixin. So for example, here I could get rid of all of these. Let me just comment these out real quick. Oops, not the end. And I first gotta import the mixin that I have. So import, let's see, go up one file, go up one file, go up another file to source, and then go to styles, and we want the index. And then let's just include our mixin. What do we call our mixin? We called it borders with two parameters. Our first parameter is gonna be, what was it? The left top borders. So left top is gonna be white, and right bottom is gonna be 999, this grayish color. Oops, not hashtag white, just regular white. And let's see if that works. So before, I'm gonna comment this out to make sure our border is gone for our outer app. So we no longer have a border, and let's see if we comment this back in, we should have our borders. There we go. So that cleans up our code nicely, and I'm just gonna bring it to the top, and I'm gonna start making my CSS properties in alphabetical order because I just like doing that. You don't have to if you don't want. I'm gonna get rid of this button mixin for now, and let's use our borders mixin for the header. So include it in the very beginning. Include borders. Left top, I believe, is going to be 7B, 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 and right bottom is going to be white. Get rid of those. And it seems like everything's still working, and I'm just gonna go ahead and alphabetize those. Let's do the same thing for our body. We have include borders. Left top is 7B, 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 and right bottom is also white. Whoops. Get rid of those. Alphabetize these. Everything seems to be in order. And so for our face, we also have a border, but it's flipped the other way. Kind of like our outer border, but it has a different color for our bottom right borders. So, and I actually want to make that the default. So if we don't use any parameters, just leave it like that. In SASS, if you don't have parameters, you don't put parentheses. You don't need to put parentheses. And it's called borders. I want where the right bottom is 7B, 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 and left top white to be the default. So how I use defaults is go back to my mixin file, and for our left top, we are going to initialize it as, and I said left top is going to be white, and right bottom, the default is going to be 7B, 7B, 7B. So this would be our default. And that way we could write our code a little bit simpler by not having parameters here. Border style, border width, font size. That's good. Get rid of those. And let's align these, alphabetize these. So let's see what we have now. All right, so everything's still the same except our app CSS file is now only 35 lines long. So that cleaned things up very nicely. So that's good. And now let's start filling up our body with a bunch of buttons. 9 times 9, which is 81 buttons to be exact. So I'm pretty sure no one here wants to go through, by the way, I'm in the app file, app component. I'm pretty sure no one wants to go through every, copying and pasting 49 buttons. So we're gonna write a function to do that. But before we do that, let's introduce a state variable into our app component. And I'm gonna call these cells. So these will house all of the contents of each of our buttons. So it's gonna be actually a 2-dimensional array, a 9 by 9 array. So it will pretty much be a big array with 9 smaller arrays that also has 9 elements within. So to use states in a functional component, we have to import a useState function, a hook, and let's do this. So const, I'm gonna call these cells, and to update them, we gotta use this set cells, useState, and I am going to introduce a type. So let's think about these. So how are we going to make this? So I am first going to make a function that generates all of these cells, and I am going to put them in a utils function. I know that this component here, this app component, is going to be pretty full. So I don't want to have all the logics that we don't need in this page. I want to extract them out from this page. So let us introduce a new folder, and this might be our last folder outside of components that we make. We're going to call this utils, and I will put an index.ts file inside, not tsx, but just a regular ts file, because this is not going to be a React or JSX component element. And let's see, I'm going to call this function generate cells, export const generate cells. I'm going to do a named export like so. It will not take in any parameters, but it will give back an array of an arrays, kind of like what we talked about. So this is what we're going to do. Let's see. Let's cells. I'm going to define cells as an initial empty array, and I'm going to start filling it in. So I lied. I'm actually going to have a lot more folders. Before we go on, we need some constants. So instead of hard coding, I was going to do this. For let I is 0, I is less than 9, because we're going to have 9 rows. Instead of doing this, however, to make it a little better, instead of hard coding this 9 in, I'm going to put that into a constant variable. So I'm going to declare my constants in another file. Sorry for not saying that I was no longer going to build directories, but I actually am. And I'm going to call this constants. Put an index.ts in there and export const. The first constant I want to make is called max rows, and this will be 9. And also I'm going to have export const max columns, which is also going to be 9. And some people may think we could just do like maxed row cell, row column, I mean, because they're both 9. So we can do this. However, although I'm not gonna cover this in this tutorial, on this right now, what we're dealing on 9x9 grid is on the easy difficulty of this game. But if you look at the hard difficulty, the expert, we have 16 height and 30 width, meaning these aren't necessarily equal. That's why I'm defining two separate constants for the row and number of rows and the number of columns. So let's just save this. And again, I'm using named exports. Let's go back to our utils folder, import both of those in, import max columns and also max rows from /constants. And instead of using this 9 here, we will say, so we're gonna first build up the rows. So we're gonna go all the way to max rows. And in the beginning, we're just gonna push into our cells another empty array. And then we're gonna have another for loop, because within this empty array that we just pushed, we're gonna add a bunch of cell contents here. For let's see, and maybe I shouldn't use maybe I should use row here to make it a little bit more meaningful, because I'm gonna have another index variable which I will call col. So for columns, this will be less than max cols plus. All right, now, so I just used predator just now. So now we're gonna start pushing this cells in. So what are we going to push it in with? So we are gonna introduce objects. So each of these cells, individual cells, will be represented by an object. An object is, again, a JavaScript object has a key and a value pairs. It has a bunch of key value pairs. And the reason why they're going to be objects is they're going to contain more than one information. They may contain information such as, is this one currently a bomb? Or has it been opened? Is it visible? Or what are the number values of these? So there are couple things that these have to be aware of. So that's why I'm going to push into our cells a bunch of objects. And this is where types comes in handy. And this is where TypeScript comes in pretty handy. Because I remember when I was coding this in JavaScript without using TypeScript, I was constantly getting confused as to what property names I was using. Because there is no auto-completion in JavaScript, but in TypeScript there is, especially if you type it pretty well, which we will hopefully try to do here. So let's do that right now. So we're in our rows, now we're in our columns, and we're gonna push to this empty array that we have just made. So how we do that is cells at the current row we are going to push, because that itself is an array, and we are going to push this, an object that has, let's see, we are going to have a value which will be -1 for a bomb, 0 if it's nothing, like for example, like this part right here will be a value of 0. And I may change my mind later, but for now, let's just go with this. Or 1 through 8. So these numbers represent the number of bombs next to it. But if a bomb surrounded a number, that is 8 total. So it'll be a number from either -1 for a bomb, 0 for empty, or 1 through 8. However, I may change that. So let's introduce some types into our file. So instead of hard coding these in, and me always remembering that -1 is a bomb, 0 is empty, and 1 through 8 is gonna be those numbers. Let's introduce types so that we don't have to remember all these ambiguous numbers. So I'm gonna make another folder in our source directory called types. Put an index.ts in here. And the first type I'm going to make a named export is going to be cell value. And this, by the way, is going to be an enum. So for those that don't know, enum is a TypeScript concept. So, and it pretty much holds, what is the definition of an enum? So let's see what TypeScript offers. So as it says here, enum allows us to define a set of named constants. So instead of having this cryptic -1 and all that stuff, we could just have a named constants here. So let's do that. So we are going to have bomb, and then we are going to have let's see, 1. Can I do this? No, you can't. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we could also have none. And I'm actually gonna put none in the beginning and bomb at the end. And then we are going to import our types now. Import cell value from types, and our value, we are going to initialize all of our values as none. And the way that we use enum is kind of like use it as an object. So cell value dot and see again, TypeScript gives me all of these things that I could use, but I'm going to use none. So the cell object is going to have another element called, let's see, another element called, what should we call it? A state. So we are going to introduce another variable. So what is a state? A state, we can have 3 states. One that is closed. I don't know what other words to use to this. Untouched? I don't know. We might come up with a better name later. One that is visible, like these, the one that has been opened, and the one that has been flagged. So we're going to introduce another type. Export, and this is going to also be an enum type, cell state. And we are going to have I don't know if open is the right word. We'll just call it open for now. Open is just nothing here. That will be the default, and then visible, and then flagged. Those are our 3 types. Let's make sure we import that here, cell state. And for this one, we're going to initialize all of our states as open. Like so. And now we're getting some TypeScript error because we didn't introduce a type to this. So we got to define all of these. So what cells is going to be is an array of, let's see, an array of a cell object that has a value, which is a cell value, and a state that is a cell state. So it's gonna, so our cells, let me make this a little bit bigger. Our cell is gonna be an array of not just this, but an array of another array that contains this, like so. So it's an array that contains this. Now I'm gonna extract this and call this a cell type. So copy that, go to our types, and I'm gonna write export type cell. And this is pretty much going to be our type cell right here. So go back to, not to my SASS file, but go back to my utils file, And let's import from the types a cell. And let me just bring this to the beginning. So instead of writing this now, we could just write it's an array of a cell. See, now we no longer have the errors. Meaning, we could only push things inside this variable, another array that only contains cells. So if I try to push, like let's say like a number, see, it's gonna give me a TypeScript error. The argument of type 3 is not assignable to parameter of type cell because 3 is not of type cell. However, if you put a type cell like such, then it works. All right, so now if all want to plan, we have generate our cells variable contains an array of 9 different arrays that each contain a cells variable here, a cell element here inside. So assuming that went well, I'm just gonna return cells for now. So let's go back to my app.index, import the utils library that we just made called generate cells. And by the way, we could type the output of this function. So this is a function, remember, and the output is going to be a cell, an array of a cell. All right, so go back to my app.index, and we are going to import generate cells. Whoops, like so, and initialize it by invoking the generate cells function. Now, just to see if that went well or not, I'm gonna console log cells like so. Hopefully we have an array in arrays. Inspect. We have array 9, so that's looking good so far. And each of them are arrays too, with value state. Value is 0 and state 0. So that's very good. Now, let us try to show those inside here. But in order to do that, I am going to introduce a button element that will house. That will be a component that houses all of those cells. So going back to my components folder, I'm gonna introduce a new component called capital button. It's a bit of a misnomer because technically this is also a button, but it doesn't use this component. I could have called it capital cell, but then that will conflict with our type capital cell because this is also called a cell capital cell. And that's why I just decided to stick with calling it a button, capital button. Index.tsx, because we're making a functional component or any React component, I mean. And then as always, capital button, SCSS file. Initialize this with capital button like so. It's a SASS file. Go back to our button component that is empty and fill the boilerplate. Import React from React. Not sure why that's giving me an error. It shouldn't. It's probably a bug. We are going to const button is going to be a functional component fc, and right now we're not gonna define any props, and let's just return a div with the class name button. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to import the button SASS file like so. Let me try closing this, opening back up. Still getting in there. That's probably a bug. All right, so let's go back to our app file. Let me get rid of some of these. So I don't think we need the utils, the types for now. index.ts, we don't need the types file. Number display, we don't need, so let's close that. App, I feel like we need these. Index SASS file, we do not need. All right, so I only have these 4 open. Now, let us stylize this button. So let's go to this. Let me open up my handy blueprint. And we are going to have a width and height of 30 pixels. We are going to import the mixin because this is also buttons. So we gotta use that mixin that we defined. Let me just go to my app file, just copy this import, bring it over here. And I am going to include the mixin borders. Yes, and without any parameters because I'm using the default. Now, go back to my app. Don't need to console log anymore because we know that it's right. And within our body, we are going to render all buttons. So the way that we can do that is, let's just do this. We are gonna make a function called render cells. Render cells with an S. Let's make that here. It doesn't take any parameters. And by the way, I could have technically wrote what I'm about to write here all within here, but that gets kind of messy. So that's why I want to make it extract into a method. The output of this function is going to be a react.react node because it's just going to be like a JSX. Like so. Let's do this. We are going to return cells.map. Now, what are each element of cells? It's gonna be more arrays. So, and I'm gonna call this array called row. And I'm going to also get the first parameter. So within a map method, inside is a function. And the parameters, the first parameter is always the element that we're iterating over. And the second element, an optional parameter, is the index. I'm gonna call this the row index. And within that, get our row. We're gonna map again because each row contains 9 cell elements. And those are what we want. So we have a cell, and then we got the column index now. Like so. Now put curly braces. And what do we want to return? We want to return, I don't need curly braces actually, I don't think I do. We are just going to return, because we're going to return something right away. We are going to return the button element, which obviously we did not import. So let me go back to my import. Notice I didn't write any export defaults. So let's write export default button. And then go back to my app, import our button from button, and then we have to, let's see what happens now. Let's see what we get. Yep, so this is what we get. So it's looking pretty good in my opinion right now. However, we're getting this warning. Each child in a list should have a unique key property. So that's what we have to do. So for each child here, whenever we're looping over something, each of them have to have a unique key. And the way that I'm going to use that is I'm going to put ES6 string interpolation. And we're just going to do row index by column index. That will be unique for each cell elements. And there is no longer complaining. So that is very good. All right, so I think that's good for now. That's good for now. I'm pretty satisfied with how far we have come. So let's just commit our changes. Git add all, git commit with the message, finished styling the body and the cells. Get rid of that sign. I press enter and git push.